You start off with a guy with a wand in his hand and you gotta follow your instincts. Raise the undead with it. Once you do, you'll have a friend with you that you never knew you needed and will love you forever. However, since no one can name one instance when love bought their clothes, we are going to venture a bit farther than normal to secure the items to sell for gold, since this guy does need some starting capital for the den. The reason why becomes apparent as soon as we reach level 2 and we put our points into teeth. That is a bone skill, and pretty much the only thing that you need to know about this right now is that it is expensive in terms of mana cost. However, it does provide AoE, which is why I want to be using it in the den. Especially against large group of Fallens, especially if you can line them up, one after another. At level 3 I decided to invest another skill point into it, which now gives me 3 teeth at my disposal. As the perfect duality check, the mana cost of the skill also increases, and those 2 mana potions that I bought in Rogue Encampment ran out way before I knew when. Well, I guess you wanted a barb start to the season anyways. Right? Well, I guess that Necro does start slow, but I learned from my shortcomings and picked up all the trinkets the den had to give me, so that with each level up I had from there on out, I had the mana to keep up with the cost. I also swayed all into damage with this guy because his utility skills aren't really worth much in normal. Not to mention you can often get them on items for free to save you the trouble of spending points on them. Thus all into teeth as I took on the Countess Tower multiple times to get the rudimentary runes for stealth for later. I also aimed for level 12 here as a standard benchmark, and thankfully my 2 pursuits aligned beautifully. I also grabbed a point into Clay Golem at this level as my meat shield of choice, since it is cheaper than a mercenary and can be summoned where required just by pointing and clicking. From there I only leveled once I reached Endariel. This is where having that meat shield is going to pay dividends, since casting it in front of her will give me a minute of breathing room to stop running and attack the mad poison woman. Did I just use the words mad and woman in the same sentence? Apologies for the redundancies, but with this strat your childhood crush is dead, and thus we can move on to Act 2. My entry into Act 2 greeted me with level 14 and 10% faster run walk boots from Farah. This is why I always put 30 points into strength. Zooming through I reached Maggot Lair. Now this guy actually does excel in this area, at least for the parts where he is not getting his ass kicked by a bunch of cold enchanted beetles. These are just necessary evils though, since they are rich with XP and got me to level 15. I made stealth in preparation for level 17, and that is something I reached in the arcane. Level 18 was much more exciting though, since at that point I could add another attack to my arsenal in the form of Bone Spear. I also equipped a 10 FCR wand to increase my DPS, none of the above that I ended up using for the Duriel fight. That is because the general stat for the Duriel fight is Iron Maiden plus Clay Golem, and who am I to spit in the face of speedrunning tradition? What is happening here is I bought a wand with +1 to Iron Maiden earlier, and using this curse I can Uno reverse Duriel's physical damage back to him. Clay Golems are the obvious sacrifice victims, since they can be infinitely respawned, something you do quite a lot in this fight and only cost mana. Back to your regularly scheduled programming, Bone Spear works with the principle of piercing through your enemy, so the thing that I said about lining your targets in a straight line back in the den applies double here. In a way, this guy is quite like my previous girl, chucking piercing lightning furies. Only, you know, he isn't lightning, and now that I think about it, not that furious either. Anyways, it's enough to take on Trav. That is good, since he would be doing that a fair few times, since on ladder, this happens to be the spot to farm in normal due to their static spawning position. Now I mostly farm to level 24 on these guys, and that is mainly to equip and use the teleport staff that I shop from Ormus in the meanwhile. However, with this guy I stayed for a level longer, since I got quite fortunate and found an am rune from these guys. While not that useful for my guy, it will do wonders for a level 25 mercenary and add some much needed boss killing capability to my arsenal. All the while, I put points into Bone Spear for more damage from that skill and sold any valuables I found looting to put some money in the bank for a rainy day. I reached Mephisto and unleashed my Bone Spears while staying safe behind my meat shields. Iron Maiden strats don't quite work as well on this guy, since Uncle Mephi hosts a variety of elemental attacks which are unaffected by the curse. However, Bone Spear at this level is strong enough to take care of him, especially with all the extra points from the leveling spree from earlier. We continue to reap the fruit of that in the chaos. Bone Spear is plenty strong to take down the foes that lurk around here. Another favorite of mine, a helmet with 2 Ral runes in it, comes quite handy against fire damage from the CS or from the Diablo fight. For it, I also saved a skill shrine from earlier in Act 4. Look at me acting like a host of a cooking show, but these respawn every 5 minutes, which meant that I could use it to do some extra damage to Diablo with my Bone Spears. You can tell that I needed it as well. As mentioned before, single targets are not this guy's strong suit. It also doesn't help that he's running for his life for half the fight. Clay Golem helps, but it only takes a sneeze from Diablo to leave nothing standing between me and death. Still, pretty good returns considering that all I spent on the guy was 1 skill point, as all quite like in level 26, all but one of my points have gone towards damage. With that level 26, I could get a level 25 mercenary and stick this on him before I went ahead to take on the ancients. Did he help in this fight? Sure, I'll believe it. Well, one thing that he definitely ended up doing was taking the attention of the ancients away from me, which is the primary thing that I need him for anyways, as I scrambled around the 3 brothers, poking them with bone spears every safe chance I could get. I kid, but that was a pretty solid performance from our guy. This skill has literally grown up to become quite potent right before our eyes. Can it take on the dragons from wave 5? Oh, let's not get hysterical here. Along with their deep sarcasm, Necros are known for running from fights that they can't handle, and this is one of them. Bale, on the other hand, is another story. This guy is the reason I went through the whole Amrune journey of getting my Merc a strength. Man, look at that crushing blow. Did he land many? No. However, again, he served this primary purpose of distracting Bale while I peppered him down with my own offense. Would the Am tier have served its purpose better on, let's say, an Act 5 Merc? Well, yes, but you see, Gulzar and me, we're in this together. We're a team, him and me. He distracts, and I kill. It's a winning combination. Let's change it. To do that, let us clear the den first. You can see that we don't really need much help with our offense. However, we are going to give it a bit of an explosive jump with Corpse Explosion. 10 hard points, not negotiable. Then get Bone Spear and its synergies. Which this isn't one. Okay, one more time. Bone Prison and Bone Wall are pretty much the same since they both provide you with the extra damage from synergy bonus to Bone Spear while also providing you with a defensive skill. Not only that, these defensive summons have a special ability of luring in monsters from far away, which in turn makes your screen fill up with monsters which you can turn into corpses, and then I believe I don't need to spell it out for you. Going forwards, our skill progression is going to be in our bone skills. That is Bone Spear and its synergies, since those are our major corpse creating skills, and availability of corpses really is all that stands between us and victory at this point. A lot of that leveling happened in the Countess Tower, since the runes that the Necro requires are a bit more typical than the usual Talthal Ort Am sequence that most characters are satisfied with. Once I did find the requisite runes, I grinded normal Drognan for a +3 Bone Spear wand to get this, a +8 Bone Spear white, which also gives me 20 FCR. In conjunction, we have the usual suspects of Lore, Stealth, and Ancient's Pledge. With it, we also have some ghetto rares and magics for my amulet, rings, and the boots. The belt is Night Smoke, and for my gloves, I managed to find a pair of mages, which are really nice and currently gets this guy to the 75 FCR breakpoint for the Necro. What that entails is that the bone guy casts bone things fast and kills Bad Poison Lady quick, and quite safely as well, thanks to the bone wall providing a constant shield from her attacks. Of course, one skill that I did not get a chance to showcase in that fight was Corpse Explosion, so here we go. Some corpses go boom as my Necro reached level 34. They will continue to do so through the entirety of Nightmare as the offense of my Necro shifts from bones to explosions. Not against bosses though. Bone skills are the only way to thwart them. The strat here is simple enough, where you cast a bone wall to distract them with a toy that they can destroy, kinda like how you do with a little child, and in the meanwhile, you can spear them in the back. Good god, I hope only a part of that metaphor is applicable. Bone Wall hardly ever comes up while fighting reg monsters, but I put another point into it as I reached level 41 because of its Bone Spear synergy. The Trav aren't exactly reg monsters, and thus the wall acts as a nice floodgate against the council members while you single out a council member to get the chain reaction started. Against Mephisto, the wall holds up enough that you can snipe him with Bone Spear to get his HP down. Despite CE stealing some of Bone Spear's thunder in terms of skill point investment, this thing still does respectable enough damage, as you can see. That thunder is not without merit. Corpse Explosion is just that good against large groups, and it got me level 45 before the chaos. Another thing that happened before the chaos was this. That's quite huge, since the Bone Rune Word requires 2 of these bad boys, and getting one of these early halves the amount of effort that I will have to put in later, in essence. For now, CS was quite effortless and enjoyable actually. Blowing up corpses and watching monsters fall while I gained XP tends to be that way, as I reached level 46 before getting to Diablo. At Diablo, you can see that this guy is not the world's greatest boss killer. I mean, he's not bad per se. I have definitely seen worse, but after the Sork, Pally, and Zons that I have played lately, you can feel that he does miss that touch of blessing that those guys got from Blizzard. I use Clay Golem here instead of Bone Wall, since he would literally just melt the wall. His lightning hose and firestorm are just way too powerful. Thus clay golem for repeated timely distraction turns out to be the better strat here. Before reaching the ancients, I reached level 47 and I put a point into bone prison. I then proceeded to use said prison against the barbarian brothers, which is just a circular form of bone wall that we're used to. However, Koralik just jumped over it and Talik literally ripped through it, and thus I had to retreat and get my trusty clay golem strats out for distraction. The one ancient it would have worked to treat against turned out to be lightning enchanted, and with every bone spear that I hit Maddock with, his charge bolts ruined the cave surrounding him. Not the best showing for this skill, granted, but the fight was easy enough that I got by with my usual offensive and defensive techniques. Bone Prison is still tankier than Bone Wall though. The reason I have not used it till now is because it gets quite messy and really easy to box yourself in little nooks and crannies. Of course you can do that to your enemies as well, as can be seen with this clip of Wave 2, making it easier to get them close and snugly to take full effect of Corpse Explosion. It works a treat against bosses as well, but I would have to wait a little bit to show you that, since I will be staying here and leveling till around level 65-ish. Along the way I picked up some of those utility skills that I was talking about ignoring in the early game, like amp damage and revives. Those I used in the Bale fight as sources of crushing blow to get Nightmare Bale down quicker than just my spears and my merc would have been able to. In its midst I also did a little bit of trading, not much, just got a 4 open socket partisan for my merc for a P-Ami and made him an insight. The reason for me leaving around level 65 in Nightmare instead of my usual routine of 70 was that I knew that I had to do a lot of counter runs ahead of me, and these do supply with ample XP to get the next 5 levels. Especially when you take on a Herculean task as mine of farming a particular item, that being an rune. Of course what you saw me finding there was a Mal instead, but that is the beauty of online play, in that I can trade the thing that is more valuable to the market but not so much to me and get an and a Lem rune. Both things that are very valuable to me and will keep in making my experience richer. Contributing to that were my +8 to Bone Spear White Wand, Lore Helmet, Ancient's Pledge, the Bone Rune Bird for which I wanted 2 runes giving me 2 to Necro skills and 30 all res, an all-res rare amulet, Sanders boots with 40 faster run walk, all-res 12 ring, a demon hide sash with lightning res, and a 10 FCR ring, which in conjunction with the mages gets me to the 48 FCR breakpoint. Now what I lose in FCR from my stealth I gain with a ton of damage from skills, survivability from 30 all res, and the chance to cast level 15 bone armor, which was equal to my current skill investment level as well. That gives me a very good defensive utility, making it very hard to die to melee hits. As I'm leveling here, you can see that I'm also using Bone Prison for crowd control, and thus I just put points going forward into it. Of course my offense comes from Bone Spear and Corpse Explosion. You can see in this Andy fight how much amp damage CE does, even to an act boss. The revives are a nice form of defensive utility as well, as they attract the monster's attention away from the necromancer. Especially since it's not like necromancers are known for being tanky or anything, having the revives fronting all the damage works out great in beating hell with this guy. Of course fronting damage is not the only thing that the revives are good at. Take the Duriel fight for instance. Now yes, Bone Spear does respectable damage, but I can assure you that the steady downpour of HP from Duriel isn't because of my piercing Bone Spears. The Marauders mauling him with clubbing blows is playing its part as well. Same can be seen happening to Mephisto. Just a bit more ham, since Uncle Mephi is more frail and does get beat up quicker by our cronies. I did the same to Diablo but lost the footage, but you can imagine more of the same, and if you can't, well, here's more of the same in the Ancients fight. As you can see, 4 to 5 of these Marauders are often enough, and you can readily find them in any River of Flame / Arcane Palace near you. Believe it or not, I'm still shooting Bone Spears, but I believe as is tradition that the thunder of this skill has been stolen again by another. One thing I will say though is that I put the Inside Tretch Cure combo on a Prayer Merc, and you can see that even though I'm constantly casting Bone Spears to, well, merely assist in the work that the ogres are doing, I'm doing so at full HP and mana. With one final point being in Bone Spirit, I reached the throne. Wave 2 is magic immune, and thus Bone Spear can do nothing to them without a Sunder. Thankfully you have other tools that you can use to deal a variety of different damage to them. Bone Prison helps in that fight, and it does the same against Bale because he is a jumper, that Lord of Destruction. Due to his teleporting shenanigans, it was hard to get the ogres all on him at first. Thus I had to teleport around myself and keep on with Bone Spears against him at all time. Just the incidental blows that the ogres had on him though were still fierce. You can still see how much better they are in hell as compared to Nightmare, and this fight, thus was indeed easier as compared to the easier difficulty. Just what the necro is all about. It only gets better. Time to take it to the moon. Except, not so soon. You see, the necro is great. He can even kill declone if given enough time, but to achieve new heights, he does need some help in the speed department, and what character does better help than a sorceress? Speaking of help, I also decided to rush this character, which was a interesting experience. Apologies to the guy whose 10 minutes I wasted by being an idiot. I did only rush normal with him since for some reason I thought I would get mad XP by just being near him when he killed things, but apparently that was not true, so I was left with a level 5 character that had access to Act 5. Thus I leveled using the standard rushing route, or so the internet tells me, of Tristram till level 15, the Tombs of Tal Rasha till level 20, Trav till 25, and then cow runs till you are ready for Nightmare. Once I decided to buy a 4 open socket crystal sword from the market to get myself a spirit and went about Nightmare and Hell quite like I did in my perfect start to Season 6. Except I didn't. You see, this girl is a moneymaker and I didn't bother leveling at Nightmare Bale really. I just rushed through Hell Act 1 to land in Arcane in Act 2, and this, boys, is where dreams come true. For the past 2 videos, this is where I have made my high runes, and nothing has changed for this time as well, as I farmed keys of hate and traded them for keys of destruction and keys of terrors for profits. Then we could get the elusive 3x3 key sets and sell them for not quite as much as I was expecting. I honestly got more than most. Turns out early ladder 3x3 keys are only worth like a Vex rune. Or maybe it's because of that Notchin May guy who gave tips on how to earn burr runes by selling these in his last video, which sent the market haywire. I wonder if you should like and subscribe to his content, you know, just to stay on top of capitalism and whatnot. Whatever you decide, this is not really gonna cut it. That was about 5 days of effort and it only got 2 lows for it. Clearly, something has to change. Thus, I got the brilliant idea to trade for torches, except, yeah. Turns out declone and ubers are just different animals, and trying to get a torch on this guy is just gonna take way too long. Thus, I just bought some unit ones off the market, buying unit torches for 4x4 keys and trying to make a profit. What can go wrong?
Bam! Just like that. That's all there is to it.
Welp. That was a week's worth of effort condensed into 5 seconds. Hope you enjoyed that. Turns out, the Zon torch actually sold for more than the Pally one. Man, our girl has come a long way. Our boy isn't doing so bad either. With that nice influx of cash in the bank, you can probably deduce what comes next. 753. I mean, I guess it could be worse. Anything other than a 775 is the same, to be honest. Other than this, thanks to those low runes I had from earlier, I also had some spending money from earlier as well to get some more gear. Gear that included Heart of the Oak and a flail. Yes, I know what the resistance roll is, I don't want to talk about it. Enigma is my body armor, giving me that speed that I'm after and +2 to skills and huge MF as well. Spirit shield with a 32 roll. Shaco with the P topaz that I got for the going rate of an Ist rune, mages that I found, Marowaks that I also found and are good for their faster run walk and stats. This MF rare amulet is a placeholder. I would love to replace this with Amaras, and I have 2 FCR rings with a little bit of res on both, getting me just short of the 125 FCR breakpoint for the necro. That is because my sash is a massive placeholder. It gives me life, but an Arak would do wonders here, and that is something that I would be going for first as I MF with my necro and gather some wealth. The one good thing about playing necro is that you can get decent gear for him for cheap, like this 1819 torch that I got for basically only a Vex rune, which is a steal and a half. This Annie I found, and the small charms are an assortment of life, res and mana that I found during my journey. I do have that complete inventory of skillers, and it was much easier to fill out this time since these only cost a lem a pop as compared to the Javazon skillers, which went for a hefty ist. On my offhand, I have a CTA. Yes, I know the role, I don't want to talk about it, and another spirit to boost the skills. My res are decent-ish, but they don't really need to be since the primary area I wish to run with this guy is the pits. The damage is sitting at a cool 6.5k and my MF is 222. For the skills, I have Respect to Poison Nova. That is because of its excellent AoE, and since poison immunes are non-existent in the pits, I have put points in its synergies as well. 1 point going to the wonders that are Corpse Explosion and Bone Armor and Revive. Rest of the points I'm dumping into lower res, and once this is maxed, I will go after bone armor since most of the damage I'll be getting hit with is going to be physical. I'm still using the prayer merc with insight, trench, and cure to give me that insane aura boost of both mana and health. The plan of attack for this guy is to join a high player count game. Since the pits are not a common area that most people farm, at least not at this stage of the game, you can often do it solo. I go in, cast lower res, and start blasting poison novas. Upon seeing some dead bodies, CE still does pretty good with lower res at these higher player difficulties, and I use it to finish up monsters and get some revives for defensive utility for the rest of the run. With this guy you can focus down only bosses or go for the all clear technique. I did a bit of both over the course of 500 runs and found a perfect mana small charm which would be pretty good for my own use case. I also found an Eth Rockstopper, a pretty cool find, and it has good rolls for the res as well, but being that niche of an item, it was quite hard to sell. The first big ticket item came from the super chest at the end of the pit with a Skiller Grand Charm with +1 to Jav and Spear skills and 7% faster run walk. That is a GG find right there. One of the best GCs that you can find with faster run walk, and if you know the market, you know these things fly off the shelf for jaw runes. Now I would like to say that I used my jaw to end world hunger and whatnot, but my necro needed some new trinkets and thus I decided to buy it for him using it. First was a D-web for a burr rune, and can I just say, an excellent deal. Again, take into consideration supply and demand. Not a lot of people find D-webs and thus they are often priced as people want them. This one though was a gem and honestly much better than getting one with a +2/+2 skills and much lower negative enemy poison res, which in the end is the most important stat anyways. Next up are some upgrades that I mentioned during the gear showcase. First is a Mara's being clearly superior with +2 skills and a 24 res roll that I could get easily for 2 ists of the market. That left me with 3 ists left over, which was the perfect amount to get an Arak, the other gear piece that I was most overdue for an upgrade. With all those upgrades, my gear is definitely looking more well-rounded. I had to drop down to the 75% breakpoint since D-web doesn't give me any, but my DPS overall has shot up by a lot. What that means is that I can farm high players difficulty faster with this guy, giving me a better no-drop chance from monsters to find stuff like runes, items, or even charms like this one with perfect fire res. Not something that I really require as I mentioned before, but something that I did require in the past dropped me for a few runs later as I ended up finding a unique spiderweb sash of my own. Hey, I mean, I'll take it. That's 3 ist runes back if you think about it. Another decent find came in the form of a Skiller Grand Charm, this time being +1 to war cries for the barbarian, which go for a mal on the market. Decent indeed. Moving on to bigger and better things though, those higher player difficulties gave me a high rune finally in the form of an Ohm rune. Now with that Ohm rune I could upgrade another part of my build which isn't quite up to speed. I wonder what that could be. Yep, that sure is speed. You know, it would be too greedy of me to keep this beauty to myself and not share it with the world, which is why I decided to trade this. Yes, that is the only reason, not because I got like 2 jaws for it or anything. No, I'm not that shallow. Actually, I am. Those jaws break down nicely into burrs and lows, and I can use one of those lows to buy an SOJ, which is something I really wanted since one of my FCR rings is pretty redundant at the moment. The burr I could literally use to get a 5-bow CTA. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's straight profit from my perspective. Got an SOJ, an extra burr and a low, and basically ended up with the same CTA that I ended up selling. Scenes. Let's get back to the runs for some more, and this drop was an insanely cool one for it was the unique winged axe and it was Eth as well. Eth Lacerator. I'm not even mad that I couldn't end up selling this thing because again, niche, like I got offers for it but because of different time zones I couldn't respond, etc. I'm still buzzing because this is a cool find at the end of the day. Next up, something that I had no desire to sell since they were an instant upgrade to my current gear, War Traps. These things are extinct on the market and people price them basically as they want to, but a pair of 40% War Traps I believe are just too good to give up for any high rune that I can get at this point. I will take these and run. Haha, lol XD. Using the extra MF, I binked some solid items in the runs to come. First was the TC87 for the Necro, that being Bone Flame with +3 to skills and a middling roll on the resistances, but literally seconds after, I found another TC87, that being the unique Ghostglaive Wraith Flight. Worth absolutely nothing, but I will take the cool factor of finding 2 TC87s that close together. Thank you very much. I also found a unique ring which turned out to be a wisp with perfect 20% lightning absorb. That's pretty cool. Then I found a Death Cleaver, Not as unfortunately, a legendary mallet which turned out to be a stone crusher, and my favorite drop of the bunch till now, Eth Reaper's Toll, with one of the worst ED rolls recorded on camera, but I will still take it since it's sold for a gnome rune. For rares, I found these cool little gloves with 20 IAS and tri-res with high fire, decent poison, and low lightning res. For runes, I found a couple of mal runes over like 20 runs of each other, a vex rune from the super chest at the end, and a jaw rune to wrap it all up. I know we've seen this rune plenty during our exploits, but actually finding one always hits different. With the 500 pit runs done, there really wasn't much left to do for my necro. But to take revenge for earlier. Bur, tier, mal, ra. Oh, wait, no, it's lum. Well, good thing I'm rich, right? LOL. So for our final exploit, the gear remains pretty much the same other than the beast, which I totally made myself and on the first try without messing it up because I've been playing this game for so long. That would be really embarrassing if I... Okay, yeah, Shaco, Enigma, Mara's, Spirit, which I should have gotten at 35 by now to make room for another SOJ, but it's not like I have runes left for that anymore, so we'll just go ahead with this stuff. The things that have changed are on the Merc, for he is now wielding an Obedience, great rune word, 40 crushing blow, super useful when taking down high health monsters, the rock stopper that I had found for some excellent defensive utility, and duress with additional crushing blow and also open wounds, which are crucial as you probably saw from that last fight. The skills have also changed, since to take on the Ubers, I once again have to take the form of a summonmancer with max raise skeleton, max skeleton mastery, max summon resist, max revive, 1 point in corpse explosion and bone armor, 1 point each in amp damage and decrepify, and the rest I'm dumping into raise skeletal mage, as those guys I think are the least valuable. The general strat for attack is to start in the Anya portal to raise an army of skeletons. Once that is done, bob down to River of Flame and get some of the big guys for some crushing blow action. After that is done, the 3-minute timer is running, so we rush into the matron's den. Lilith is always at the counterclockwise way of which you came in, so rush in, amp damage her, and stand at a safe distance from her. One annoying thing that she did was she instantly killed my mercenary, and I suppose he didn't really get an open wound onto her, which meant that she had started healing again, but thanks to the higher damage output with the fanaticism aura and the fact that I had just more things hitting her, we actually took her down this time. Duriel also killed the Merc instantly. Oh joy, and as it turns out, that little fight and this fight without the Merc in the beginning took so long that the 3-minute timer for the revives actually ran out and the ogres all ended up dying. Still, since it was just Uber Duriel, I stuck it out with the Skellies and the Merc. This really just shows you how good the gear on the Merc is. That Obedience puts in work, and those open wounds from duress cannot be understated. That all being said, let's stop dicking about and get some real Uber killing assassins on our team. The Moo train is on the way. Isuel just got completely destroyed. I think the old boy didn't even have time to kill my Merc, which pretty much every other Uber has taken it like it's their birthright. Uber Mephisto of all monsters actually followed suit in Isuel's footsteps, though not for lack of trying. He's obviously much more dangerous, but also much more frail. Thus he lost HP quick. He actually got closer to killing me than my minions with his incidental charged bolts and ever-present conviction aura, but thankfully not so. Bale required a fresh batch of cow sacrifices and multiple visits to town because he kept killing the Merc, which was very annoying, will not lie. The man is fat, and with his huge HP stat, he also raised a lot of his minions, which did annoy me and the minions quite a lot and prolonged this fight much more than it should have been. A final bunch of bovine sacrifice and we were ready for Diablo, who also killed my Merc, like a bunch of times. Before people comment, I was feeding him rejuves. Ubers are just strong, okay? They just one-shot things. Thankfully by this point the open wounds had already taken effect on Diablo and the cow's damage was enough to vaporize him and give me a clear path to enjoy the victory of my spoils. 17-15 Zon. A fitting reward to a middling performance. Still, hope you enjoyed that. Yours truly, with love.